Hey guys, how are we doing? It's Crypto Insight UK here, bringing you back another Ripple XRP video. Today, we've got a great interview between Susan Friedman and, I don't know, HPS. Hey guys, how are we doing? It's Crypto Insight UK here, bringing you back another XRP Ripple video. Today we've got a massively important interview between Susan Friedman, who's head of public policy at Ripple. She's also part of the Digital Pound Foundation, and her discussion on a recent HPS interview on HPS Insights, and that's Hamilton Plays Strategies. I can put the link to this interview in my bio. I was going to break this down into a few different TikToks. I still might do that because there's a lot of information in here, guys, that I think is massively important if you're a Ripple XRP holder. Also, if you're in the crypto space in general, we dive deep into the regulations. I've just got about 10 minutes that I want to break down and give my opinion on to you guys. So we'll get into that any second now. But before that, guys, if you do enjoy the video, please hit that subscribe button, like, and drop a comment. Share it with a friend. I do think this will be one of the better videos that I've done recently. Not that the other ones are crap, because obviously all my content's great. But just because it's massively important, and it really opened my eyes to where the space is in terms of regulation. It's further forwards than I thought. There's more stuff happening than I thought. But yeah, without further ado, we'll just get into what Susan Friedman, you can find her on Twitter here at SS Friedman. We'll just get into the conversation that they have now.
The uncertainty in the U.S. relative to a lot of our major competitors and other major economies around the world that are making much more, at least, much more progressive or productive headway in terms of establishing, okay, what are the frameworks and how, what does a sandbox look like? And, how can we use these tools to, power economic growth, to compete for talent and compete for economic growth, around the world. So I'd be curious, we touched a little bit in your intro. Obviously, you've done a lot of work in Europe, but I know there are, in Japan and in the UAE and really around the world, there's a number of places that are all looking to kind of formalize this. And I'm editorializing, but my personal view is that if they get there before we do, that's not great for America. So maybe I've betrayed my bias too, but with that leading question, can you just tell us a little bit about your work in Europe with Blockchain for Europe and the Digital Pound Foundation?
No, absolutely. I mean, the answer to that point is that other countries have already gotten there. They are ahead of me.
Okay, good.
So straight away, guys, she's telling us that a lot of countries are already there with regulation, and we'll let her continue before I jump in any further.
Something that I am sure that the Department of Commerce is going to be taking a look at when they are looking at American competitiveness as part of the charge under the Biden EO. And right now in Europe, the markets and crypto assets regulation is.
So it's just about to talk about Europe, but she said that there's a department looking into crypto regulation now as a part of the Biden EO, which is the executive order that Biden released recently. Well, when I say recently, I mean last month. Basically given 180 days for some kind of framework to be thrown out there for crypto. She says that they're currently researching, and now she's going to go on and talk about what's going on in Europe, and I think this is a very important point to listen to.
Actively being debated. We expect it will be passed by the end of the year. That regulation sets forth an EU-wide framework for crypto assets. And you can have issues with some of the specific provisions of what it says and how it regulates the space. But I think the main point is that it sets forth a clear framework. You will go into the EU and understand who is regulating you, how these assets are characterized, how you can operate and function. And that is absolutely a competitive advantage vis-a-vis the US, and something that I think, our hope is that, and our expectation is that, and we saw some tweets in the aftermath of the Biden EO that Congress is fully going to keep up its work, even while the Biden administration EO studies and reports are taking place, because I don't think we can afford to lose 6 to 8 months while other countries are moving ahead. Blockchain for Europe is very much focused on advocating for an open and productive crypto environment within the EU. We've been engaging with EU policymakers throughout the pendency of the MiCA debates. And the goal is to put in place exactly, a clear framework that, looks to balance consumer protection with innovation.
I'm just going to stop her there because there's some real key points that I really want to jump in on before she goes any further, and I don't want to get my points confused. The first is that jumps out to me is that they're going in Europe. We're going to have regulatory framework here by the end of the year. She specifically said that without like any sort of hesitation. She was like, almost without a doubt, they've got framework coming out by the end of the year. She said that you might not like all of it, but you're going to go to Europe and you're going to know exactly who the regulators are, and you're going to know exactly what you can and can't do in regards to cryptocurrency. She then, I want to highlight on a second point, which is really important, talks about in America, we can't afford to lose that 6 to 8 months that if another jurisdiction comes out, like another continent like Europe, or if the UK or wherever come out, we can't lose those 6 to 8 months of innovation time, like twiddling our thumbs trying to work out what to do. We've got to get some framework out there. It's basically what Susan Friedman has just said there, which I think is massively important. And there was a third point which I've actually forgotten what she just talked about at the end there. Just going to quickly go over that again just so I don't miss that, because I think there's some really good points right there.
On advocating for an open and productive crypto environment within the EU, we've been engaging with EU policymakers throughout the pendency of the MiCA debates, and the goal is to put in place exactly a clear framework that looks to balance consumer protection with innovation.
Yeah, and that's another great point. She's highlighting consumer protection and innovation thriving together, whereas in America what we basically see is consumer protection, their bracket of consumer protection seems to be regulated by enforcement that we've seen through the SEC, and they basically have no scope for innovation as it stands. But this is all likely to change, in my opinion, and let's get into the next part of this interview.
The Digital Pound Foundation is a little bit different, more focused on central bank digital currencies, but I think they are, definitely part of this discussion about what a broader digital asset ecosystem looks like. And their focus is how do you come up with a well-designed and implemented digital pound, which is very similar. The Fed is looking at these questions. Central banks globally are looking at these questions. And it's important that that whatever is decided in one jurisdiction, that knowledge is shared and considered globally, because what you don't want are walled gardens where you develop these tools that can only be used in specific jurisdictions, but can't be used outside.
So she then talks about CBDCs, digital pound specifically. She relates it to the Fed and said that the Digital Pound Foundation, where she works as well, they're looking to help Britain obviously create a digital pound and the best sort of ways that they can do that. And they're also saying that how important it is that they share that research and information across jurisdictions. So the UK share it with America, share it with everywhere that are doing similar things. She said it's important that they don't include a walled garden, like create a walled garden, meaning that they don't build in their own little networks and make it almost impossible to trade from one place to another. This terminology comes up a lot with Ripple and XRP. Ripple have a private ledger, which we're going to talk about in a second, and these walled gardens on this private ledger are easy to remove if it's all done on the same ledger, which is something that I talked about yesterday, but we'll get into the next part of this interview. There is an advert, so let me just try and find the end of this ad. I didn't write down the timing of that, which is silly from me, but let's quickly do that. I'll quickly find that for you guys, and we'll get back into the next part. I think she talks about the private ledger, CBDCs, and what there is to come next.
PS.com.
You can share with us. Sue, I did it and share with our listeners your point of view on CBDCs, Ripple's point of view, that is, and any updates or interesting case studies you can share with us on what's being done across the globe on this front.
Thank you for the question. I think, we view CBDCs as part of that digital asset ecosystem and not to the exclusion of privately issued solutions like stablecoins, but meant to be complementary to. I think one of the most interesting applications as we think about it, and I think we're going to see some really interesting responses to the Fed consultation that's happening now, but the idea, for example, of programmable money and the idea.
So I just want to quickly highlight before we get into anything else, she said that there's a Fed consultation happening right now, and we're going to get into the next points in a second. I'll do more of a summary.
That a central bank or a government can direct cash to exactly who it intends to send it to for the specific purpose for which it's being spent. I think when you think about this in the context of COVID, it's sort of incredible. Ripple has developed a private ledger solution that's based off the XRP ledger.
So just before I let her get into that about the XRP ledger, there's a lot of talk about CBDCs and intrusion of privacy and all these different negative points towards CBDCs, and I understand those, and I'm on your side, guys. Like I don't sit here and talk about CBDCs because I want them to come in, especially not in the way that they look like they're coming in at the minute, but I do see the financial and economic benefits of them. If you're on the breadline, let's say we have, like for the pandemic specifically is a good example, America writing stimulus checks to every household. A lot of households don't really need it. That's why we see like stocks pumping, etc. And some families and households needed it 2 months before the stimulus check came there. So what a CBDC would be able to see is like which households literally cannot afford energy, cannot afford food. Can they can literally credit those accounts with energy tokens, so they can just pay their energy bills straight away. Maybe some food, like almost food stamp food tokens for those people. So there are massive financial benefits to CBDCs. As much as we might oppose them because of lack of the loss of like anonymity and privacy, etc., financially they could really help us going forwards, especially for people who have problems. And if we want like instant solutions to problems, that's where there is real positive for CBDCs. And now we're going to get back to XRP's private ledger and CBDCs, and Susan's going to go into that a bit further here. But as I said, guys, this is a banger of a podcast, isn't it? Like, it came out on the 19th, today's the 22nd, 3 days ago. So it's very, very current. Let's see what she's saying next.
We are working with Bhutan and Palau are two of the countries and that we have announced partnerships with and that we're exploring CBDC solutions with. We are also involved in the policy space generally, and our work on the Digital Pound Foundation is meant to reflect this, to help contribute to some of the thought leadership going into CBDCs. I think, we want to make sure that as countries consider whether and how to issue them, again, that they're thinking about all the ways in which they could potentially be useful. And in some cases, it may be that a privately issued solution is going to be the better choice there.
So that's something that I think is really important. And she's going to say next that ultimately a mixture of both is good. But she mentions that a private digital currency could be a better solution than like a central bank one for some countries. And I think that's an amazing point to draw on, because whenever we had privately issued sovereign currency, essentially, but what I think by that is we'll have maybe within different countries their own CBDCs, and then maybe like a broader CBDC. So like the US dollar might obviously spans out to a lot of different countries, and that might be a private version of the dollar and then like a sovereign version within America. Like, it's a bit of a strange one to think there. But one thing that I do really want you guys to think about from this, and this is something that we hear a lot, is like people don't like Ripple, it's a centralized company, blah, blah, blah. One thing you really, really need to be focusing on here is this lady who is like head of regulations and stuff within Ripple and works at Digital Pound Foundation. She's talking about how Ripple are helping create policy. They're helping create policy. So if you don't think in some way Ripple are going to be involved in this new financial system, and XRP, when she's talking specifically about the XRP ledger and the private ledger they've created for CBDC testing, then I don't know what planet you're living on. I literally don't. They're literally telling you, we're working with the Digital Pound Foundation, I'm working with European regulators, we're working with the Fed to create CBDCs and help them create the best frameworks, the most inclusive, best CBDCs they can create, and they're going to experiment on the XRP private ledger, and you don't think they're going to be involved. Like, maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm miles off it, maybe I'm hearing this wrong, maybe I've got a big bias, but guys, what I'm hearing is Ripple are involved. They already are involved because they're creating it. They're creating the policies, they're creating the network, they're creating the opportunities for these countries to be experimenting on these networks. In some way, they're not going to do that for free. Why would they? They're not going to do it for nothing. They're a business. And like everybody says, a centralized business. Yes, XRP isn't centralized because even though it is under control, the escrow is under control from Ripple, XRP specifically isn't centralized, but the business of Ripple is, and they run on a profit. They aren't a charity, so why would they be helping these countries develop things and then not want to be involved or not going to be involved further down the line? In my opinion, that doesn't happen, but let's let this continue.
Also, how do you implement third-party actors like Ripple? How do you think about the policy environment? How do you make it function in a way that's effective with existing monetary systems? So, and we are definitely not the only, multiple players. I think there are going to be multiple views, and I think being able to participate in this debate is going to be incredibly interesting as 2022 continues to unfold.
Sue, I think we have time for one or two more. I did want to ask, I joked a little bit earlier that DC discovered crypto last year, and
infrastructure bill minted a lot of Bitcoin, Brian.
It did. But I do, in a similar joke, but I think DC's finally moving from kind of crypto 101 to that sophomore year, maybe education level on it. What do you find as you're working up on the Hill, as you're meeting that outside the handful of regulators that really get this, what is the audience of DC still not wrapping their head around when it comes to cryptocurrency?
Oh, that's a good question and a little bit of a hard one. Because I'm not sure that I've wrapped my head around all things related to crypto. I think it's partly reflective.
It's an evolving space. Yeah,
exactly. And I think to your point, we are definitely in the sophomore phase. There are true leaders in Congress who have not only wrapped their head around it, but are trying to educate and be involved in the conversation. They include, but are.
So basically, she's just going to go on to list a bunch of senators who know a lot about cryptocurrency. But she goes further in this interview and talks about that they do know, like there are a group of people within Congress and the US who know quite a lot about crypto. And that's where she first learned about it at the Fed, by the way. So they are further ahead than you think in knowledge. They're just not everybody is that far ahead. And I think it's about education at the minute. It's basically what she's saying. Education and testing. But it's such a rapidly evolving space. As she said at the start of this, the section that I played for you, they can't afford to waste 6 to 8 months in this space. Like, if you think that America were center of the world for the internet with Silicon Valley, they want to be the center of the world again, because at the minute, economies all over the world are crumbling. We've got loads and loads of problems. And for me personally, obviously, it's my bias again on crypto, but crypto is going to be the future and maybe something that can save us from this economic mess. And so if I was any sort of country, sovereign state, I'd be looking at trying to get as many people involved in crypto to my country as possible, because I think that'll be the future of the world of finance. But I'll leave you there with that thought process, guys. And I'd love to know if you think that Ripple won't be involved and why you think that would be the case. And if I am miles off it, I'd like to know that as well, because I do like to listen to people's opinions on that. So let me know in the comments what you think to this interview. I think it's amazing. It's a great interview. You can check the whole thing out at hamiltonplaystrategies.com/podcast, insights to crypto. Or you can just go and look on Ripple's Twitter, and they've retweeted it. So hope you enjoyed the video, guys. Share it with a friend if you did, and have a great weekend. We've got the weekly roundup coming out tonight. It's a great episode where I talk with Pav about a load of different things. Actually, we mentioned this podcast as well. But I'll speak to you all soon, guys. Peace up, A-Town down, as Ush would say, and I'll see you on the next one.